So, Satan is a well-known spiritual concept and often associated with Christianity and Christian theology. But did you know that it actually is very much a concept in Torah, in the Jewish tradition, in Judaism? In fact, it was really first articulated in the Jewish tradition. It's pronounced Satan in Hebrew. It's a Hebrew word. And I wanted to talk to you about who Satan is from a Jewish perspective, because the idea of Satan as this sort of angel of death and evil angel, so to speak, bad angel, is actually pretty different in Judaism. And I want to explain the difference because it can actually be a really, really enlightening and I think inspiring concept when you look at it in its proper perspective. And I want to share with you the words of a brilliant book by Rabbi Benjamin Blech called Understanding Judaism, which is one of my favorite books on Judaism, where he has a chapter talking about this. And I want to read to you an excerpt where he talks about this. Really, really fascinating stuff, because from a Jewish perspective, Satan is very much real, but it's not as bad and scary as you may first think. Have a listen. The first commandment demands recognition that there is a God. This is the first of the 10 commandments. The second is concerned with his exclusivity, that thou shalt have no other gods before me. The first without the second is meaningless. A God who does not stand alone is not all-powerful, and therefore not worthy of being called a deity. In the days of the Talmud, Jews lived in a culture that accepted the reality of two major powers. Babylonian dualism recognized a god of darkness and a god of light, a god of evil and a god of goodness. The theological problem of the suffering of the righteous and the success of the wicked was muted in the assumption that a satanic force was as much ruler of the universe as the power that sought the reign of the righteousness. The Mishnah taught, which is a Jewish text, quote, if one in praying says we give thanks, i.e. the major prayer of the 18 benedictions, where the proper phrase is to recite we give thanks, but once, he is silenced. The Talmud explains the reason for this concern. We silence a man who reiterates thanks to God because we suspect him of acknowledging two powers. Perhaps he is attempting to placate two different deities. His very prayer to God would become an abomination. His very words would betray the cardinal creed of Judaism, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. But isn't there at least a measure of truth in the reality of Satan, the powerful figure whom Milton describes in Paradise Lost as fierce as 10 furies, terrible as hell, what seemed his head the likeness of a kingly crown had on? Did not Satan lead the heavenly courts to rebellion against God himself? Is he not, as Shakespeare wrote in Hamlet, the devil who hath power to assume a pleasing shape, deceiving us throughout the generations in his evil desire to reign supreme on earth? Satanic cults may to this day feel a need to appease the devil incarnate, but Judaism knows of a certainty. Unto thee it was shown, that thou mightest know that the Lord, he is God, there is none else beside him. Quote from Deuteronomy. Know this day and lay it to the heart, that the Lord, he is God, in heaven above and upon the earth beneath there is none else. Also Deuteronomy. Satan does indeed exist. In fact, he has two other identities. Satan is the incarnation of the evil impulse, as well as the angel of death. In each of these guises, it is crucial to grasp that he is not an independent entity capable of conflict with God. He is rather a messenger from the Almighty, sent to perform an unpleasant, albeit necessary, task. So he begins by explaining, we don't say there's good power and then there's evil power. No, if God is all-powerful, all-knowing, then he is in control of everything, and both the good angels and the bad angels all come from him. They're all his emissaries. So he's actually working for God, Satan, not against God. Let's continue. Satan makes his first biblical appearance as the prosecuting attorney of Job in the heavenly courts. We're introduced to him at the outset of the first chapter to a man who seemed perfection itself. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was wholehearted and upright, and one that feared God and shunned evil. Indeed, he was blessed by the Almighty with all things, sons, daughters, sheep, camels, oxen, a very great household. So this man was the greatest of all the children of the East. It was this man whom Satan questioned and sought to harm. It was his sincerity that Satan would not accept as true piety. Does Job fear God for naught? Hast thou made a hedge about him and about his house and upon all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions are increased in the land. But put forth thy hand now, and touch all that he has. Surely he will blaspheme thee to thy face. So Satan's saying to God, he's only good to you because you're good to him. Try giving him a hard time, then see if he sticks with you. Satan, it would seem, is the cause of all subsequent tragedies that befell Job and his family. Yet the most important verse in this section is the one that follows Satan's diatribe. Quote, "And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, all that he hath is in thy power. Only upon himself put not forth thy hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord." God gave Satan, by the way, sorry for all the thous and thys. This is an old book. Goodness me, let me see. I think it was maybe produced in the 90s. So they're kind of using, the old language. Yeah, 1991 originally, the old biblical style of translating it into English. But anyway, I hope you're understanding. Let's keep going. So God gave Satan permission to proceed, and he was able to accomplish what he sought. Satan went forth only because he went from the presence of the Lord, that is to say, with divine permission. The rationale for Satan's authorization is the theme of the book of Job. Implicit in it are numerous concepts that classical commentators have chosen to emphasize. Perhaps Job had simply to learn the reproach of God's chastisement in chapter 40. Quote, "And the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind, and said, Gird up thy loins now like a man. I will demand of thee, and declare thou unto me. Wilt thou even make void my judgment? Wilt thou condemn me, that thou may be justified?" God's intellect is greater than Job's. Questioning him is not a right given to creatures fashioned by a far superior creator. Perhaps as others would have it, God allowed Satan to harass Job, just as even he, God himself, had caused pain to Abraham when he commanded him to sacrifice his son, his only son, whom thou lovest, even Isaac, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there, for me, a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell thee of. That was the test. God did prove Abraham. In Hebrew, the word nisa, prove, is related to nes, a banner, mean both to test and to uplift. In being tested, we become uplifted. We rise higher than we were previously. Adversity may purify, even as metal under fire. For the artist, suffering may be the key to creativity. For the saint, it can serve as a source of inner strength, the tapping of personal resources that might otherwise never have been uncovered. To this day, the book of Job offers a myriad of possible explanations. One thing it teaches is a certainty. The evil Job endured came not from a power separate and distinct from God. Satan had to gain permission to do from the one God. Let us give the devil his due. Satan has no strength other than what God allows him. This name Satan is also known to us in another guise. Freudian terminology has acquainted us with the id, the ego, and the superego. In Talmudic and Midrashic thought, the battle is waged in our personal lives between the inclination for good and the inclination for evil. Inside every one of us, there is not an ego, but a little devil, constantly imploring us to silence the voice of our conscience and quell our desire to do good, to shut out the influence of Torah and ignore the demands of our faith. What is this evil impulse? Does its very presence not suggest the validity of dualism? The existence of a power in conflict with the God of goodness and righteousness? Not at all. At the very end of the story of creation, when the text states, "And God saw that all he had made, and behold, it was very good," the Midrash explains that, quote, "all that he had made" refers to the evil inclination. Indeed, the very inclination for evil was created by God, and yet it was very good. Do you hear that? When God talks about creation, he says it was good, but when it came to the evil inclination, he said it was very good. Without it, sexual desire would be non-existent, people would neither marry nor have children, the world would remain barren. Without it, people wouldn't be tempted to do wrong and would therefore gain no credit for doing right. Without a predisposition to evil, there'd be no struggle for righteousness, and for all our efforts would simply be automatic responses, intuitive reflexes, preordained patterns of behavior devoid of conscious decision or noble character. "And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart." That's what the Torah says. In Hebrew, the word for heart is lev. Your heart in Hebrew is the third person singular. It should be written libka. Yet, the Torah writes levavcha. the plural form in its description of ideal divine service. The Midrash explains that levavacha implies with both your hearts, with your inclination for good as well as your inclination for evil. We can achieve the noblest stature precisely because we can direct, or in Freudian terms, sublimate the bestial within us into the saintliness of divine service. Only once when Abraham welcomes the 3 strangers in Mamre does the Bible refer to heart in the singular. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and stay ye here your heart. The language is not in the plural, and your heart shall be satiated, but in the singular heart. Why this one exception? Abraham offered his hospitality to what he assumed to be 3 Arab strangers, but who in fact were angels, and angels do not have 2 hearts, since they lack the evil inclination. Their hearts are attuned only to the doing of good, which is why human beings are greater than angels. The adverb in the phrase very good can only be relevant on the 6th day of creation, when the evil inclination comes into being. The evil impulse presents the challenge which, when successfully mastered, allows a human being to become almost the equal of God. The evil inclination and Satan are one. They are evil only in the sense that their missions require them to perform highly unpleasant tasks. So Satan basically just does God's dirty work. Yet the actions of both have a purpose made necessary by the wisdom of God. If they were not divinely acceptable, then clearly they would not come to pass. So actually, even Satan himself is an agent of creation, for God is a creator, not a destroyer. There's one more role designed for the devil. From the human perspective, it presents Satan in his most awesome and fearful garb. It's the final meeting of every human being with this divine messenger. The play is the tragedy, man and its hero, the conqueror, worm, wrote Edgar Allan Poe. Here too, the key word describing the one who causes what appears to be the ultimate evil, the end of life, is an angel. The Malach HaMaves, the angel of death, performs a mission no less divine than birth itself. From our limited human perspective, that mission may seem cruel, but not from the divine perspective of eternity. The Talmud records the story of a sage who almost rendered the angel of death powerless to continue his work. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi grabbed the sword from the hands of the Malach HaMaves because he believed that in doing so, he would bring great blessing to the world. It was then that God allowed the rabbi to hear a groan that issued from the 4 corners of the world. It was a groan of pain and suffering, a groan filled with tears and sorrow. When the rabbi asked for the meaning of the hideous sound, God informed him that it was the cry of a world deprived of the relief of death. You believe that the angel of death is only an angel of cruelty, said the Lord. Know, my son, that the angel of death is also a messenger of mercy. Death allows those who have done all they need to do on this earth to leave it for the celestial spheres. Death is the entranceway to heaven. How beautiful were the words of the sage racked with pain, lying on his deathbed, who when asked how he felt responded, almost well. The moment when he would be well would be the gift of God's angel. Not one with autonomous power to wreak evil, but with authorization from the Holy One to allow the soul to move from the body to the precinct of the immortals. That is why God said to Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, return the knife to him, for it's required by mortals. A world without death is a world encumbered forever by its material and physical limitations. Indeed, Satan exists. He has 3 all-important functions. Before I finish, by the way, with this final paragraph, I would just add, there's also a concept that at the end of days, when we have the Messianic era, that the evil inclination will be slaughtered, that Satan will no longer be. And that's because the idea is that we all get resuscitated to earth, and earth becomes heavenly. We can truly serve God here, having completed our mission of dealing with evil, dealing with death, dealing with the consequence of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And now we only can choose between good and even better good, even greater good. And the test will have been overcome of dealing with the evil inclination. So it's a temporary measure that we need in this world before we move into a perfected world of only good. But it's basically like a personal trainer. The Satan is a personal trainer that's pushing us to do more, to become greater and greater in serving God and building our relationship with him and truly creating a dwelling place for him where we've conquered all that could be evil. So everything, every single element of existence can become one with God. It concludes by saying Satan exists. He has 3 all-important functions. He is the voice of the adversary, pleading for trials and tests that allow humans to attain higher states of perfection. He's an evil inclination whose smooth serpentine talk serves as a challenge to our conscience and accounts for our potential superiority over the angels. Satan is also the angel of death whose cruelty on this earth is applauded by those in the other world as they welcome the newly freed prisoners from the confines of earth. In Shakespeare's eyes, he may be an enemy to mankind. The Jew, however, is certain that the angel is not God's enemy, but rather only his messenger. Dual powers are impossible. The Lord is our God. The Lord is one. And I think we can understand Satan as showing mercy by giving people an end to suffering in this painful world. That's true for as long as this is a world in which Satan and suffering and evil exists. Of course, we pray for the day where that no longer is the case and this world truly does become heavenly and eternal. But heaven, for the time being, is sort of like a retirement home from serving God in this mortal, painful world. But the key point to get across here is that no, there's no battle between good and evil where it's not clear who might win, and this is the Satan's working against God. If God is all powerful, all knowing, truly is the one and only creator, then that means everything is created has a divine, godly purpose, including Satan itself. And I think this approach is much more encouraging, much more inspiring, and it should give us the encouragement to try and overcome those negative voices within us and external to us as well. In Hasidut, Jewish teaching, the inner teachings of Torah, we're taught that we shouldn't necessarily see life. It's taught this in the Tanya, which was really the founding document of Chabad, that when trying to overcome these negative urges that we all have every single day, we shouldn't be so two-dimensional about it and think it's either we are righteous or we did bad and that's it. Actually, it teaches that God appreciates every single slight effort, even if sometimes you succumb. The fact that you sometimes push back and resist, every single bit of resistance we have to the voice of the Satan helps to make this world better, helps to break through the barriers of spiritual confinement in this world. And so every single effort, even if it might not be seen, has great merit and consequence for the entire world.
Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.